Islam, Shalom, Hola, Aloha, Bonjour, Osio, Assalamu Alaikum, Konnichiwa, Jumbo. This your brother Zach Bay, Indigenous American Moor, coming to you live in full effect. Like, share, subscribe to my channel, hit that notification bell down below so you can be notified whenever I'm dropping some new content. Thank you, I really do appreciate your viewership. You already know what it is. We back at it again. Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. Yeah, I definitely have some definitions for you. Stay tuned. You know, you can always pause it and read closer if you would like, and also check out some of the other definitions on the page if you can see them. Yeah, you know, they're always trying to silence channels and voices like mine. Let's jump into it. All right, starting off right here. I want to do adverse. All right, opposed. All right, so opposed to something, contrary, in resistance or opposition to a claim, application, or proceeding, having opposing interest, having interest for the preservation of which opposition is essential. All right, that is adverse. All right. So being opposed to what? Now, this is very interesting. There's a good brother who's always putting information about adverse possession claims and such online. Definitely check out some of that information if you know who I'm talking about. All right, adverse possession, exactly what does it say? It says a method of acquisition of title by possession for a statutory period under certain conditions. All right, statutory period. That's an indeterminate amount of time. All right, that can be any amount of time depending on the jurisdiction, depending on the territory, depending on the local state laws, things of that nature. All right, it says it has to be described as a statutory method of acquiring title of land, title to land by limitations. All right. Those limitations, like I said, can be any X amount of time. And then it says the possession must be actual. All right, so when it comes to possession of property, of a real property, real estate or land, any kind of property that you can physically hold, tangible, all right, actual possession. If you've ever heard possession is 9/10 of the law, it's kind of where it comes from. It says possession, actual possession. All right, so being in possession of said land, that means you're still staying inside the residence, you're still staying inside that domicile. You're upkeeping the property, you're making improvements, you're maintaining the property, you know, you're being a proper steward of that land or that property. All right, and that's how you gain adverse possession over a statutory amount of time, which is the limitation, and you must have actual possession of it. All right, and it says this is acquired method, all right, of acquiring and possessing property or title said property. All right, let's continue. Hopefully you got that. I've gone over this one before, but hey, we're gonna do it again. Now, applying what we just learned about adverse possession, I want to go to allodial. First thing you will read is free. Free from all encumbrances, free from all liabilities, debts, burdens, free from all subjugation, things like that. All right, not withholding of any lord or superior. See? You're not withholding to the government. You're not withholding to a senator. You're not withholding to a land baron. You're not withholding to a king. All right, you're free. It says own without obligation of vassalage or fealty. All right, so being a vassal or swearing fealty. All right, the opposite of feudal. And we're going to continue to read. Allodium, that goes along with allodial. Allodium, land held absolutely in one's own right and not of any lord or superior. Land not subject to feudal duties or burdens. These feudal duties or burdens can consist of taxes levied upon your land, some type of burden, some kind of duty to perform. All right, taxes, which in antiquity could be X amount of lumber comes from your property, X amount of wool comes from your property, X amount of produce comes from your property. Those will be levied in taxes because you are under a superior, you're under a lord, like a land baron of some sorts, a king, a duke, a earl, some type of nobility would be leasing you that land, and you would just you would simply pay them for the privilege of them giving you or letting you steward that land, letting you work that land, but you're still under their feudal duties and burdens, which is why taxes are levied against you. So this is pretty much telling you anything that you have to pay taxes on, you do not truly own, fam. And about those titles, a true title, all right, true titles are not the same as the ones that are given us nowadays. All right, I want you to take a look at this one. Let's move along here. Art. I've done this one before, but I always have to combine this one with art and legalese. Legalese is arts, is a form of art, which is the language that they speak in the courts of laws, which is the language that attorneys or lawyers, judges, prosecutors speak, all right? Systematic application of knowledge or skill in affecting a desired result. Also, an employment, occupation, or business requiring such knowledge or skill, a craft, as industrial art. Continuing. It says, right. Well, that was pretty much it when it comes to art, like words of art. All right, systematic application of knowledge or skill in affecting a desired result. Also, an employment, occupation, or business. All right, we have to remember that it's a craft. Now, let's continue to move along here. Attorney. All right, an attorney. In the most general sense, this term denotes an agent, all right? Always an agent of the court, an agent of the crown, an agent of the bar, or subject, or a substitute, or one who is appointed and authorized to act in the place or stead of another. That's when you're not taking your proper capacity, when you're not doing it yourself. You have an agent, or one acting on the behalf of another. And they're supposed to be doing this. If you do have an attorney, if you do have a lawyer, they're supposed to be operating in full faith, fam. They're supposed to be operating in your best interest, not what's in the best interest of themselves or the courts. In your best interest, if you cannot do it for yourself. All right, we're going to continue. All right, I wanted to cover this one really quickly. Attorney's lien. All right, just because I have another thing about liens in here. When you're talking about liens, it's like first right to funds. That's what a lien is. It's like a debt that must be paid. It's a type of levy. All right, it says attorney's lien, the right of an attorney at law to hold or retain in his possession the money or property of a client until his proper charges have been adjusted and paid. It requires no equitable proceedings for its establishment. All right, and we continue along here. Also, liens on funds in court payable to the client or on judgment or decree or award in his favor, recovered through the exertion of the attorney, and for the enforcement of which he must invoke the equitable aid of the courts. Just for the privilege of using the courts, just for having an attorney exert actions for you, they are able to receive payment, and they can hold any type of awards that you might receive, any type of decree, any type of judgment in your favor. An attorney's lien, if you do not pay them, they have the first right to that over you. If you do not have one of these, second, see here, right here, first lien, fam. Now, when you talk about first lien, I want to bring up the UCC1 financing statement. Definitely look into that. First lien, one which takes priority or precedence over all other charges or encumbrances upon the same piece of property. All right, that's usually the all capitals name, fam, the bond that's attached to it. All right, that's what they're talking about in most situations when you're in these court proceedings, and which must be satisfied before such other charges are entitled to participate in the proceeds of its sale. All right, so anybody who believes they're entitled to anything must go after the first lien. If you file a UCC1 financing statement, you will be first in line for any type of debts accrued against your name, accrued against the bond that is held in the treasury for said name, right? If you have that, you must be paid first before anybody else gets paid. So when you talk about people having perfected their UCC1 statement, meaning all the laws, all the full faith of the Constitution, all the laws are behind it, all right, and business as well for commerce, all of that is backing this first lien. If you're the first one, they will never be able to collect from you without first paying you first. And if that lien consists of $50 billion, most courts, most jurisdictions do not have $50 billion laying to pay a private citizen, a private individual. All right. Hopefully that's not too much for you, but then we're going to backtrack. Family meetings. I want to touch on this one really quickly. All right. It says an institution of the laws of Louisiana, being a council of the relatives, or if there are no relatives, of the friends of a minor. All right. Don't forget, a minor, you can liken that to anyone who's considered a minority, anyone who isn't taking their proper place in the affairs of their life. All right. Anybody who isn't taking proper ownership and leadership. All right. For the purposes of advising as to his affairs and the administration of his property. All right. So it's saying a family should get together and have meetings on what to do with a minor's property. Pretty much everybody should be having family meetings. All families should have family meetings in order to decide what we're going to be doing with our family's property, how we're going to be moving assets, controlling assets, what entity is going to be owning those assets, whether it's a trust, whether it's a business, where we're going to be pooling our money, our finances to, our energy to. We can all take a certain sum and invest it into one family member's business. And then once that business starts to flourish, we wash and repeat that cycle, that process, and then we invest in the next family member's business, and then we continue to do that through each quarter of the meeting. All right, this is how you manage your family's affairs, fam. These things are in law. Now when you go up here, that touches on it. Family council, a council of elders, a council of the wise. You know, this is what we need. And it also says, I want to read down here, go back really fast. It says at least 5 persons, natural persons, all right? It says a family meeting is called by order of a judge and presided over by a justice or notary. It must consist of at least 5, and they're put under oath, right? When you look up here, look at family council. It says see family arrangement, see family meeting, council. This is what we need to have, fam. All right, let's continue. Legal heirs. It's the next one I want to touch on. As used in deed, legal heirs and the nearest kin mean the same thing. Persons entitled under laws of descent and distribution. Person to whom law would give descendants property if descendant died intestate, all right, through like probate. If you didn't have a will, if you didn't have a trust already, they could potentially be intestate, which means somebody would have to, a judge or an attorney would have to go through the property, all of their real property, all of their legal property, assumed property, even debts, things like that, and who that will be allocated to. And most likely it would go to the next of kin, next in line, which could be the descendants. It could be the wife. It could be mother, father. It could be sister, depending on how you have that set up. But you should have this in writing, fam. You do not want an attorney. You do not want a judge proceeding and deciding and allocating who gets what, when, and where. You should already have that in writing before it's all said and done. Before you leave this earth, before you leave this plane, you should have a will, you should have a trust set up so your legal heirs get your property and not the government. All right. Legal name. Under common law, very, very important, under common law consists of a Christian name. All right. And if you don't follow the Christian faith, that could just simply mean a given name, a name given to you, gifted to you by your parents, by your guardian, whoever might have named you. It could be a name that has been passed down through the lineage. You could be carrying the name of your forefathers, your foremother, things like that. That's normally given name or Christian name. And then it will be followed by a surname, which could also be family name. In the US, they often call it a last name. All right, but it's really a surname. And the insertion, omission, or mistaken in the middle name or initial is immaterial. All right, so it says middle names are normally immaterial, whether or not you insert it, whether or not you omit it, and whether or not it's a mistake. Mostly focusing on the first name, say Christian name, the given name, and the surname, the family name. All right, make sure you own these property. Make sure you own these names. There's a difference between the artificial and the natural. Make sure you own the artificial name, the all capital letters name, fam. First lien. All right, last but not least, I want to close this out. Thank you for joining me. Legal right. It says natural rights. First thing, natural rights. Your natural rights come from God, the Most High God. He gave us our natural rights. It says rights exist as a result of contract. All right, contract. The first contract to ever exist was our contract with the Most High God. Every other contract in existence falls and comes after the contract that we had with the Most High God, first and foremost. After that, every other contract that we have on this plane of existence follows. All right, the right to create or recognized by law. That's what I wanted to read to you. Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. Like, share, subscribe. Once again, this your brother Zach Bay, Indigenous American Moor. Hey, stay safe out there and stay studied up. Peace.